Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
Everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy, and you probably are too. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here today with Elisabeth, and we are, as usual, here to talk nerdy to you. So, this week, we have something extra special to talk about. I think a lot of times we've sort of touched on this subject or touched on things in our fandoms that sort of relate to this subject, but now we're going to take a whole episode to talk to you about basically television shows, whether they're streaming or on several different forms of media, that we sort of fell out of love with. And even though we still love them, they're still part of fandoms, we are kind of struggle restarting as far as getting back into those shows, getting back into those streaming platforms, whatever they happen to be. So that's what our show is about today. I really want to kind of touch on the fact that even though we've got all these different options for streaming, like the inundation of Disney Plus and Netflix and what else is there? Hulu, Amazon Prime,
HBO Go,
all of the different options that we have. Right. I have struggled starting just because I don't know where to start, what I want to watch, what am I feeling today. And so I tend to, get on YouTube and listen to something else, even though I know I've got a whole bunch of things that I want to be doing instead. So we're going to talk about that. But first, Elisabeth has a gaming corner to talk about.
Alrighty, and this week is going to be just a tiny bit of a double feature because there was some news that came out the day that we are recording this that I did want to touch base on very briefly before I launch into my normal thing. So, just came out that Cyberpunk 2077, which has been highly anticipated for years, that was supposed to be coming out in April, has been delayed until September 17th. And I gotta tell you, I'm really, really bummed about that. The statement that they issued said that the game was finished and that it is playable, but there were some things that they really wanted to go over and make sure were smooth and were going to actually work day of the launch, which... I mean, number one, I get and I understand, and I really don't like that, some companies will just release a basically finished game and then release a patch right on its heels. Right. But at the same time, it's why would you announce a release date if you weren't close enough to estimate how long all of this would take you? It's just really frustrating, looking forward to something so exciting and then, oh no, we're going to delay that. And then also another reason why I don't pre-order, because I would actually be more upset if I had pre-ordered expecting a product in April and then, oh yeah, no, you're not going to get that until September, even though we already have your money. No. That's not how I work.
Yep. I'm totally with you there. I understand not wanting to have to patch it right away and wanting it to be a smooth game, but I also think that you shouldn't give people or take people's money until you're ready to really give them a real date.
Exactly. Ugh. So, it just sucks. And I mean, hopefully once it's released, it will be just as good as we all think it's going to be, but come on. Come on, CD Projekt Red. Right, well, what are you doing?
It's even sort of if you were to get people to buy badges for a convention and then say, oh, no, we're not doing it that weekend. We're actually going to do it a month later. You'd have a lot of angry people.
Yeah.
And gamers are different than congoers. I mean, they're one and the same. So I really, that's scary.
Yeah, so anyway, now that little bit of news is out of the way, I wanted to talk just a little bit more about God of War, which I have been playing lately, the new one that came out in 2018. So I've played all of the games from the very first one. This is actually one of the 2 series that I've actually played the games from the beginning instead of starting at the middle or the end and working my way back. And so through this, I've gotten to, see all of these different sides of Kratos, all of the different, aspects of his story and as it unfolded. And at the end of the third one, it basically, like, it did seem like an end, even though they gave us, like, that little sliver of hope for a sequel at some point. Still, it seemed like a good, satisfying end. So when they announced this new God of War, I was kind of excited, but also a little apprehensive, because after all of this time, it seemed like it was almost like a soft reboot of the series, since they weren't going with, like, God of War 4 or something like that. They were just going with God of War. So I was like, this could be good. This could be not good. I don't know. Let's wait and see. And, I didn't have a PlayStation at the time, so I wasn't able to play it when it came out because, console exclusives, which really sucks, but I finally got a PS4 over the Yule holiday, and so I was able to play it, and it was amazing. Like, even though it is kind of a soft reboot of the series, I think they did it really well. They kind of incorporated a little bit of RPG-ish stuff in there, like with the armor and the upgrading and everything like that. They kept in some really good stuff from the original series, and yet they added in all of these elements that really added to the series in a way that you might not have even thought of before, like the addition of the dwarf crafters and Mimir, the talking head, who is just like inundating you with all of these different stories and background and lore information as you're traveling and traversing the world. And it really just adds up to a full, complete experience that I was really happy and satisfied with, both from a gaming perspective and from a storytelling perspective. I think, Santa Monica Studios actually hit the nail on the head. And I'm really, really excited to see what they're going to do next as far as the game in the series, because, they've left it really open as to what might happen in the future, especially with like the little ending cutscene with showing Thor finally showing up. So, I'm really excited to see where this new kind of generation of God of War is going to take us, and I'm really, really excited to play the new games, and I'm just, I'm happy that finally a sequel has worked out for once, because there's been so many times, as we're probably going to talk about in this episode, where it hasn't. So I really wanted to take this little opportunity at the beginning here to express some positivity in this episode, and to make sure that we had some injected in here. So it's not totally negative, even though I tend to be negative sometimes.
Well, this episode's going to be a little bit like that, so
yeah.
I'm glad there's some positivity in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you've got a pretty good list of things that you wanted to talk about. What's your first one that you feel like you've fallen out of love with?
First one is actually a really big one. It has a huge fandom, huge following, and I was very, very, in the center of it all when, I kind of first fell into it, and now I feel like I'm kind of pushed to the side. And that is Supernatural. So, and just to kind of, put... I know you kind of mentioned this before, but just to kind of emphasize, any of the fandoms we talk about, we don't hate these fandoms. I certainly don't hate them. I love the worlds. I love the characters. I basically just feel like they're not being done justice, or that something has happened to kind of tarnish my love for them, in a way.
And what's funny about you bringing that one up, because I kind of knew you were going to bring this one up. It was one of those episodes that we actually, all three of us did when Emily was still on the show. And I struggled through some episodes and kept trying to get through to see what happens going on in further seasons. And I have my best friend who actually was I think she's watched very much of the seasons, if not all of them. And she had the same feeling. She wouldn't use the writer perspective or the character justice that you would, but she was so committed to the characters at that point that she was still watching it. And she was having a hard time really selling it to me. And that's what's so interesting to me too, is people who are real adamant about selling the show to you. She wasn't really able to do that anymore. And I think that's really the hardest part about Supernatural, is that there's been so many seasons. What do you feel they've done unjustly?
The writing has always been kind of a little spotty here and there, but for the sake of the storylines and the characters and the way that they were portrayed, and everything, I felt that at least for a while I could kind of, hand wave off the issues because, sometimes it comes to a point where if you love something enough that you're able to overlook those flaws. But then, especially when some other writers kind of get in and get their hands in on it and they don't seem to really respect the characters or their stories or anything like that. And the way that they treat the whole series, it makes it really hard to excuse it anymore. Because, you look back at the episodes that you loved and it's like, I love this. And it's like, I wanted more of this. I didn't want this mess that they're doing now, And so I know Supernatural is on its final season, but I honestly stopped watching about midway through season 14, which was the last season, which is now the next to last season. Mm-hmm. And I honestly haven't been inspired to pick it up, especially with what I've been hearing from season 15. So, the writers really matter, even if some aspects are kind of shaky, if it has a heart behind it, if, you can become a really good fan of it. And I've never really tried to excuse the writing on Supernatural because, I can't and I'm not going to. Even for something I love, I'm not going to. But at the same time, if it has a heart behind it that I identify with, I can overlook it, mm-hmm. While I'm watching it. But especially for a couple of the writers and producers that are on now that weren't on throughout the whole series, we kind of refer to them as Buck Lemming because it's actually two people, but together their last names are kind of like the conjunction of Buck Lemming. And so any episode really that they've touched or had a hand in has really, it's not been good. They did have a couple of episodes earlier in the series, and even those were just kind of problematic. They had some really kind of troubling themes around them, and I tended to skip over them because, it's I don't want to watch that kind of stuff, And so they've had a really big hand in these last seasons, either producing or writing or both. So, to have that kind of influence over these episodes where they really just disrespect certain characters and certain character arcs. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like this whole, I'm going to use a wrestling term. It's called hot-shotting, where you start doing big things, but then you realize, wait, I have to keep doing big things and keep this momentum up. And then you start mm-hmm. trying to, outdo yourself. And then it just mm-hmm. ends up a whole big mess, circa the Monday Night Wars from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Sure.
Any wrestling fan, I think, will get that reference. But that's basically what I feel like Supernatural has turned into. They're basically trying to hotshot with all of these different concepts and all of these different story arcs. And they're not really giving the characters enough attention or the story arcs enough attention to do them justice.
Right. Okay. And I totally agree with that. I feel like the hot-shotting concept is something that happens a lot with seasons of any show, really, that they're just trying to do too much mm-hmm. and do themselves each time. Mm-hmm. I actually wanted to talk about Doctor Who next,
yes.
but not for the same reason. Now, I think that last season, I believe it was season 11 with the 13th Doctor, mm-hmm. I watched the first episode, and I'm not going to say anything bad about Jodie Whittaker. I think she's a great actress, but I watched the first episode, and I wasn't quite there yet. And when I actually look at the times of when things came out, that show was done in 2018. 2019, they didn't launch anything, and 2020, the next season's coming out. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see it this year, but I didn't watch the whole last season. And I'll admit, with Capaldi, I think I binge watched 2 seasons back to back. Mm-hmm. And I love Capaldi. Capaldi is my favorite Doctor at this point. So it's really hard to I feel like a lot of times, even when Doctor Who, there's always a new storyline that's coming out. There's always mm-hmm. a new arc. There's always a new thing happening. And I don't feel so much that they've done the way of Supernatural, where they're trying to outdo themselves and do something bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. But bringing in the female Doctor mm-hmm. was a highly controversial thing. Mm-hmm. and having the companions having binary, non-binary, different sexualities was a big deal at some point in time. And there's all kinds of threads and things you can read about what they were doing with different companions having different orientations, even with Capaldi. It was cool to see it done. But it did feel like a lot of the show has had to, and especially like in the past and as now, had to really play off of the culture of the time period of television that's being watched at the time. Okay? So, I get it. I love it. I'm here for it. But I still struggle to press that play button on the second episode because I'm not really sure what I'm in for. And I think a lot of times with fandoms, we have this like feeling of being sure of what we've seen so far, but not being 100% in to whatever else they could possibly be doing. Because like the fear of the unknown.
Yeah,
you know what I
like
mean?
the change. You're not sure how the change is going to be.
I've never been real great at change, I guess, in that way. So I'm interested to see where it's going. I know I'll get there eventually, but I'm just not there yet. And I think that's what's interesting to me about Doctor Who is I could go back and I could watch Tennant and I could watch Eccleston. I could watch Smith, Capaldi, because I know what I know about them. But I'm worried as to what they did with Jodie Whittaker. And especially, like, why did it take a whole year to get another season out? Is that typical for that show? It kind of worries me. But we are also living in a culture that the immediacy of things is very important to us. And now that we can binge watch an entire show on a weekend on Netflix, we want that next season to come out right now so we can continue watching it. And that's not how the BBC works. So I'm really...
As Sherlock fans well know.
Yes, exactly. It's just interesting to see that kind of cultural rift play out. Okay, so what's next?
What next is I'm going to go with something else that is coming from the UK, but something that's not even necessarily a series, because I think even though it's not a series, I think it's still important to address, and that's Harry Potter. Now, I was basically fully introduced and got into Harry Potter in like my early to mid 20s, which was a time of my life that I feel that I really needed that kind of backbone in my fandoms. And just as in my personal life as well, like, you know, some of the sentiments that go along in the books and some of the things that are in them. I feel like I really needed them at that time. And with some of the things, like with the Fantastic Beasts, I wasn't really all that into it. The first one was okay. It was enjoyable. The second one really didn't enjoy it that much. And so I'm not really sure how the third one's going to pan out. But the main crux of why I've fallen out of love with Harry Potter is not necessarily even that. It's because of Rowling herself. Now, for years now, you know, we've been telling people, and when I say we, I mean, you know, like people like myself and people in the LGBTQ community have been telling people that Rowling holds certain turfy kind of beliefs. And because she's liked certain tweets from certain individuals that are definitely problematic, and her PR basically kind of tried to sweep it under the rug and be like, oh, well, she's old. She doesn't really know how to work Twitter, which is, you know, bullpucky, but, you know. Some people, I guess, just wanted to believe that. You know, they didn't want to believe that their hero, you know, believed those kinds of things, or possibly they just didn't care. Either way, recently she's totally come out and, you know, posted a really problematic tweet, you know, highlighting support for a certain transphobic person, and it's just really disheartening, especially for someone like me, to know that somebody that I once looked up to, you know, if we were to meet in person, she would just, you know, she would not recognize my validity as a person just because I'm not cisgender. And, you know, I try as hard as I can to kind of separate the art from the artist, but there are some things that it's just, in some aspects, that are really, really hard to separate, especially at certain times.
Sure.
So, I try, and, I have written at least one Harry Potter story that I have up. I'm not sure if I'll write any more. I try to kind of steer clear of the main part of the fandom and just immerse myself in the fan fiction, because that's really where you find the LGBTQ friendliness of everybody. You find it in the fan fiction. So, I try to just kind of stick to that nowadays instead of being a part of the main fandom.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about that, too, is that it's weird that she would exclude I'm not going to be PC on this, but bear with me, that she wouldn't also accept the trans community. I don't understand that exactly.
Well,
I feel like...
And see, the thing is I almost feel that was tokenist of her to include Dumbledore's sexuality after all the books have come out, because,
right.
Obviously sexuality isn't everything, but if you're not willing to put it in print in the books, then it almost feels like you're trying to pander.
Like an
afterthought. And so, if she had allowed that to come out in Fantastic Beasts, I would have felt more comfortable with, having that fact. But I feel like certain things like, oh yeah, Dumbledore is gay, or Hermione is totally black, are things that, she kind of comes out with later on to try to earn her points that she hasn't really actually done the work to earn.
You can't really take anything she says at that point as law anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, well, did she really say that or not?
Yeah, and this whole thing with, her releasing information via tweets. It's like, honey, just write a book then. If you want to add to the canon of Harry Potter, write a book. It seems so exhausting to know that what was canon, at least, can be changed by a few tweets. I get that she was trying to support the black actress who was portraying Hermione for the Cursed Child, but I feel like her, insistence that, oh no, Hermione could have totally been black, I never specified, is just completely wiped away when you can pull out the books and see very specific examples when she refers to her pale face, her white face. You can't excuse that. If you could say, hey, it's okay that Hermione is portrayed by a black actress in this play, that's okay. I'm fine with it. I like her. It's cool. That's totally different than saying, oh no, Hermione could have totally been black, when it's like, no, you totally didn't even write that. How can you claim that when you didn't even write it?
What's irritating about all of that, though, is essentially that on any stage, anywhere, with any cultural group of people, you're going to have different people cast based off of what the casting director chooses to do. And that means in the world we're living in now, you can have males that are females, and people who are traditionally white can be portrayed by black people on stage. You can do anything you want creatively at this point, and it's your vision. It's not about colors of skin or what's between a person's legs. It's about what's in their heart and in their head and in their art. And this is oh my gosh, that's so upsetting for me.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I don't want to cry. That's terrible.
Oh, trust me. And some of the people who either didn't see the whole tweet liking debacle earlier and who was kind of shocked by her support of this person, or just didn't want to believe it. They were kind of shocked by all of this. Meanwhile, people like me who have recognized this over the years were sorry? We've been trying to tell y'all this for a long time, but nobody wanted to actually listen. So, it's disheartening at the same time to see something like that confirmed, but at the same time, it does kind of let us know that, yeah, we were right. We weren't just making things up, It's almost like, we were justified instead of being gaslit and being told, no, that's not right. That's totally, taken out of context or whatever. It is true. It is right. Stop gaslighting us now,
Yes. Well, and okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time to talk about everything that I think we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Let me really quickly interject with Once Upon a Time. Aurelia and I watch it periodically most of the time that we can, but I also feel like I'm only in maybe season 6, and I'm feeling like they're doing a lot of the same thing that Supernatural did. So this one's one of mine that I kind of want to own as far as not being so into it anymore. Like, we used to watch the episodes, 2 episodes or so each night that I had Aurelia, and it would be like, that was the event of the night. You know, we'd get dinner figured out, we'd sit down and we'd watch those 2 episodes, and it was like, you don't do anything else while you're doing that. You don't mess with the Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
And I'm only in season 6, and I'm finding myself doing laundry and cleaning dishes and other things while the show is playing, and no plot line is too much, and nobody's actually really dead. Nobody's actually really gone. And I feel like they did a lot of that with Supernatural, too, in the show that I saw. So it's hard for me to, like, get attached to a character, be mournful of a character being gone, know anything really about the character because they could just have their memory wiped and that'd be the end of that. It's hard for me because although I love the basis for the characters, and goodness, Elisabeth, there are more seasons to watch, and I have no idea exactly how I'm gonna get through that, to be honest. I think we will, but Aurelia might be a high schooler by then.
It's like a slog, more or less. There's nothing that really holds your attention anymore.
Yeah, like, it's still interesting. They're still, going back to the actual fairy tales. They're still going back to Maleficent. They're still going back to Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast and all the different characters. They're still going back. There's a couple things that I don't really understand what they're doing. They've got like this trio of villainesses that are Cruella de Vil and Ursula, and I was like, I can think of better villain women than that to be a trio of evil. Like, what is going on? But I didn't write the show, so I'm still trying to support it, but I'm having a hard time doing so.
Yeah.
I suppose is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you really wanted to make sure we talk about?
Just at least one more really quick.
Okay.
I had the MCU. The movies specifically, not any other media surrounding Marvel, but the MCU specifically. Okay. And my love for them kind of started going down around Civil War. And I'll actually say it was specifically Civil War because I was really annoyed that they called it Civil War, because it has precisely maybe 1% to do with the comic that it was supposed to be based on. And I firmly feel that they just used that title in order to pander to the geeks and the nerds who would recognize such an important title that is, that in such a big storyline that happened in the Marvel comics, and they knew that title would sell regardless of the story. Which, I mean, the story itself was actually okay. I feel I would like it better if it wasn't named Civil War, but...
If it had a different title?
Exactly, because I feel that was when they kind of started to pander a little bit. At least for me, and at least up to the movies that I'd seen up until that point. There have been, like, a couple of bright spots since then, but to me, it's not really made up for the quality that's followed since then. So, if anything, there was an upside because it kind of pushed me further onto the good animation, like Avengers Assembled, and it pushed me further into the comics, just to try to get, like, good Marvel content instead of, dredging through the MCU.
Well, and it's interesting as far as, I remember not being happy with the pace of The Walking Dead and going ahead and reading the comics. And then suddenly the television show wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wanted more of the comics. So I read those until I ran out and then didn't go back to the television show because I knew what should have happened with what Kirkman had chosen to do with the comics that weren't necessarily what was going on with the TV show.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me because that was something that was really a part of my life. I go back and I see posts that I made 5 years ago and I was in it. I was in it on Sundays. Like, But now I couldn't even tell you what I watched last or who was sleeping with who in the
I honestly barely even remember. Oh, actually, no. I think I kind of do.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's been so long since I've even watched The Walking Dead. It's like,
yeah, and that's what's interesting to me about what you said about the MCU too, and as far as Avengers Assemble and that whole shift of consuming it in a different medium to suit your tastes and to suit what you believe to be more for you. You know what I mean? Like, I can see it going both ways too. Like if I love the MCU and I've watched everything, but I've also only picked up in the Infinity Gauntlet trade. So I don't know much more than that. And I was mostly irritated that there was no Mistress Death for Thanos to be obsessed with. And that was what really stuck with me for that comic book arc. And that didn't deplete it for me, but it did make it a different kind of relationship.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I kind of have similar feelings about Star Wars because these recent Star Wars movies, as I think we all well know by now, I'm really not excited about. And I really felt a real disconnect from the rest of the Star Wars community because I'm just not feeling this at all. And after a certain point, it's like the Clone Wars and Rebels can really only do so much to sustain you, in this kind of almost drought. But The Mandalorian is starting to kind of infuse that life back into me with the Star Wars fandom. So we'll see how it goes when the new Mandalorian season is released later this year.
Well, and on my honorable mention list was Clone Wars too, because I knew we would have a nice little spat about that one. I am on season 1, episode 9. I think I stopped last week or the week before that. I don't know. And it's been hard to continue, but I'm there for it. I know people who really are like, you need to get past season 1. You really do. It's going to be so much better season 2. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. But I'm not going to stop season 1 just to start season 2 and having a hard time getting through season 1. So it's like, well,
and I'll
get there eventually.
And I feel like probably media like the Clone Wars and even Rebels to a certain extent is more of made for people who, grew up kind of, watching the movies and reading all the expanded universe. And so they're a little bit more familiar with everything surrounding these events. Because I think when you're more familiar with it, then you kind of recognize it and you don't get stuck up on certain things. You know, for someone who is a more casual fan, you're probably sitting there like, wait, what's this? What's going on? What is this person? What is their significance?
Exactly. Or, watching The Mandalorian and being like, wait, that saber is a different color. What? Hold on. What happened?
And then see, that's the dark saber. That was very important in the Rebels.
It was.
Yes. So, but I mean, if you never watched Rebels or had, consumed anything regarding the dark saber, you would have absolutely no clue what is going on,
Right. I mean, hello, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so for Geek on Fleek this week, I had something else in mind, but I wanted to talk about something that's really, again, all over social media and all over our daily lives, and that's mental health, believe it or not. Congratulations to everyone. You made it through the holiday.
Yay!
The holiday season is over. I know that it's a difficult time for everyone, for a lot of people. We live in a life where you gain some and you lose people, whether it's for whatever reason, and it's hard to get through the holiday season without them. I actually know a lot of people this year who spent their first holiday without people that were important to them. And it's always interesting to me because, you never get over those things. You never suddenly wake up and realize you don't miss them anymore, whether you lost them from, them passing this mortal coil or you just don't speak with them anymore for whatever reason. It's always difficult to spend a holiday without them, whatever holiday you celebrate. But now we're into 2020 and everyone's, posted their New Year's resolutions or lack thereof of New Year's resolutions where you're going to revolt and say, oh, my New Year's resolution is to not have a New Year's resolution, or don't call it a diet, call it a life change, or all of those things. And it's interesting that we continue to kind of like go through this cycle, but it's also very easy to get bogged down, run down, especially with the weather being how topsy-turvy it is. I'm not sure what it's like down there with you, Elisabeth, but it has been a roller coaster of weather up here where we can have 33-degree weather, 60-degree weather, and then 12-degree weather with high winds all in 1 week. But I know weather has a big part to do with it. And it always bothers me when I see people who post those, check on your friend you haven't heard from in a while, check on your friend who, just lost a pet, check on your friend who, the little like 4 blocks and it tells you to make sure you check on your friend because their mental health is important. And it totally is. But we really need to check on ourselves and check on each other no matter what the situation or concept is. And there have been so many times in my life where I've heard of someone leaving us who said they were fine or didn't reach out. And recently, I've noticed this trend of lying and saying you're fine. And the people who are asking you that, they really want to know how you really are. And I just wouldn't want someone to feel like they're a burden because they're feeling poorly. There's the suicide hotline is out there and there's all kinds of different resources. I mean, I'd be a resource if I was awake and on the phone. So I just wanted to kind of like say my little PSA that not only is your mental health important, but so is mine. And there's so much out there right now that we're talking about, lifestyle changes and moments of awareness and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and how important self-care is. And I mean, if we were all here for a greater purpose, which I truly believe we are, even if that greater purpose is to take care of each other, then that's what we're here for. And whether it's to create more life or to create more art, just keep on doing it and help the people around you do it too. And I just really feel that deeply in my soul and really wanted my Geek on Fleek to kind of just be that this week, where I really just want everyone to know that I am here for you. Please be here for me. And 2020.
Yeah, and I really feel that. I mean, I don't know if anybody actually noticed, but I didn't post for Wednesday and Friday last week because my depression just took such a sharp dive, just nosedive right into the ground. And it's just sometimes when you get in that headspace, it's just so hard to even get up the energy to put something together, to write out something, to, look for something to post. And it's just I don't even have the capacity to even, put that together in my head, much less actually, physically do it. It seems like such a simple, easy thing to do, and for most days when I'm, feeling fine, it is simple and easy to do. But for days when it's, when it's a struggle just to get out of bed or just to make something to eat, it's making a social media post, it's I can't do it,
Exactly. It's just so real to feel that way too, and to say, I just can't right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Yeah.
And, self-care isn't always just, what you might see on social media, taking a bubble bath or reading or something. So sometimes it's, taking 5 minutes to brush your hair. Or, washing the dishes so they don't pile up in the sink and attract bugs. Or, maybe, putting on some fresh clothes and some deodorant so you don't smell. Sometimes it's just little things to kind of boost your mental health. And, last week I did my best and I didn't achieve everything that I had wanted to, but I'm still here and I'm feeling better. So, that's the thing, It's not always going to be easy. There's still going to be times in your life where it may be going well, but then all of a sudden your brain just trips you up, and you just have to do what you need to do to hold on to when it is a little better, until when you can breathe and be like, okay, I'm better now. Now I can tackle what I wanted to do,
Exactly.
There's nothing so important that it can't wait for your mental health. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for our episode of Shot Through the Heart, where we talk about our lovely little fandoms that we still love, but just, can't say we totally love like we used to. And I kind of wonder if there are any fandoms like that for y'all out there that you started in on and were just so completely passionate about it, and you've just kind of lost that zest for it. If there are, please let us know on our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, or Twitter. And if you have any ideas for any topics you might like us to tackle on the show, please let us know, and we'd love to do that for you. I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Lindsay, and thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.